Hello, crafty friends! It's Alicia here with a project for Tailored Expressions. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make a delightful card for a loved one in your life. Starring on today's card is the lighted up sentiment stamp set with coordinating dies and light bulb moment die set. In a supporting role is the Pear Blossom Press One Light 2-pack and their A7 Cardmakers T-Square. For cardstocks, I'll be using sugar cube, mulled wine, watermelon, pink champagne, gumdrop, and oyster, and I'm also using TE vellum and silver glitter cardstock. For stamping and ink blending, I got out mulled wine, gumdrop, oyster, and watermelon inks, as well as my red blender brush and the exclusive TE Teal Misty. And to hold everything together, I got out a variety of adhesives. Let's get crafty! I got started off camera by using the light bulb moment die set to cut out my main focal point. I used sugar cube for the light bulb, gumdrop for the filament, and the glitter cardstock for the little metal piece at the bottom of the bulb. To assemble my light bulb, I used liquid glue, and this is going to give me some wiggle time so I can get my filament centered nice and straight and centered. And then when I add it to the back of the silver glitter cardstock, I have some time to align it perfectly with the bottom of the die cut. I love to use my glass board when I'm using liquid glue because I can use the magnets to help hold everything down while it dries. I wanted some colored vellum for my card, and the great thing about the TE vellum is you can make it any color you want. So I got out some watermelon ink and my blender brush, and I just added 2 or 3 layers of ink to this piece. Then off camera, once I had a good area covered, I did hit it with my heat tool to make sure it was nice and dry, but you'll want to make sure you don't give it too much heat and warp the piece. I brought back in the light bulb moment die set for a little bit more die cutting. I'm going to use the heart in the middle of the filament piece, and then from the red vellum that I just made, I'm going to use the filament piece, but I only need that inner heart, and I made sure when I was ink blending that I did have enough room to cut out 2 of those. The reason I did this is when I layer them together, it's just going to be a little bit more color, a little bit deeper color to go in front of the light. I added these layers to the back of the light bulb with a little liquid glue again to help it get nice and centered, and then I gave that some time to dry. While that dried, I worked on the card front, and for this I cut a piece of oyster that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I cut myself 7 scrappy strips of cardstock that are 1/4 inch wide. To help with placement of the first piece, I got out a pencil and made some marks, 2 inches from the bottom left and 2 inches from the top right. Then, using liquid glue, I placed the first strip, which for me was mulled wine, and I did only cut 1 of these, and I made sure that the edges of that strip touched the pencil marks that I just made. And again, with the liquid glue, that gave me some wiggle time to get it adjusted just right. Once that first strip was in place, I adhered 2 watermelon strips, one above and below the mulled wine, and I left just a hairline of a gap between those. I like seeing that oyster peek out just a little bit. Once those 2 were in place, I finished with the remaining strips with the pink champagne and the gumdrop. If you want to try making a similar card, but you don't want to eyeball the gap, you could always place these pieces right next to each other. Once the glue had dried on all of those, I brought in a pair of long blade scissors and trimmed off the excess. When I do this, I like to put one blade right along the edge of the cardstock and then make my cut. I will be adhering the light bulb flat down to the striped panel I just created, and because of this, I'm going to need an opening for the light to shine through. So I brought back in the filament die from the die set, and I took that off camera to cut it out. Now you do not have to cut the entire thing. You'll see here that I ended up snipping off just below where the heart is. That way, if the light does shine extra behind the card, it won't shine through the little stem as well. I added some liquid glue to the back of the light bulb, and then I flipped these pieces over while I was doing the adhering and the adjusting. This way I could see right through that heart opening and get it nice and centered around the light bulb heart. Now it's time to add some real shine to this card with a Pear Blossom Press 1 light. The pack that I have comes with 2 lights and 2 batteries, and these are super easy to put together. Once you've got your battery out, you just make sure that the plus sign of the battery is at the top where it shows the plus sign on the back of the 1 light. Once the battery is installed, you can press on the button to test it, and look how easy that was. Next, I spent some time figuring out where I would need to place my 1 light so that the button would be accessible and the light would be in the middle of the red heart. Once I had figured it out, I brought in a pencil and I traced around the backer of the 1 light. Then, to temporarily hold that in place, I used a piece of Scotch removable tape. Instead of adhering my 1 light to the back of that front panel, I do want it on the card base. So I added a glue dot, and now I'm going to get that adhered to the card base. For this, I had previously cut down my stripe panel to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to bring in the A7 Cardmaker's T-Square from Pear Blossom Press to help me get that front panel nice and centered using that 1/8 inch jig. When I do this, I'm going to flip over the ruler, and I have the 1/8 inch jig closest to me, and to help hold that in place while I put down my card base and that front panel, I use some magnets on the ruler. For a little bit stronger of an adhesion, I added some liquid glue to the top of the glue dot and then flipped this piece over and got it centered onto the front of the card base. Because I use that removable tape, I can just pull away the striped piece, and that leaves the 1 light exactly where it needs to be. I want to let my recipient know this has a fun interactive element, so I brought back in the light bulb moment die set, which actually has a coordinating stamp set with it. I'm going to be using the push stamp, and I want that to be right above where the button is on the 1 light. So I temporarily placed that face down onto the light bulb so I knew that if it was pressed in that general area, it would turn on the light, and then I brought in my MISTI. I placed the card front in the lower right-hand corner of the MISTI and held it in place with the magnet, and then picked up the push stamp with the door. Now I do want it to be obvious that you push there, but I don't want it too bold of a stamp, so I used oyster ink and just gently pressed it with my fingers, and luckily that first time got a nice crisp impression. This piece will need to be popped up off the card base, and for that I used 2 layers of foam tape, making sure to get good coverage on the back, but not placing the foam tape where the 1 light is. Before I permanently adhere this to the front, I did go ahead and double check that it is going to turn on the light, and then I pulled the release tape, added some liquid glue just again for some wiggle time, and then brought back in that Card Maker's T-Square to help me get this nice and centered on the card base. Let us know down in the comments if you have ever made a light up card. For the sentiment, I am using the Light It Up stamp set, and I'm going to be stamping Love You Watts onto a scrap of sugar cube using gumdrop and mold wine inks. I want my sentiment to be stamped in 2 different colors, so to help with masking when I ink it up, I brought in some Post-it removable labeling tape, tore off a piece, and then tore that in half. The first thing I'm going to do is cover up the Love You, and I'm going to ink up the Watts in gumdrop ink. Now, before you go to stamp this onto your sugar cube, learn from my mistakes and remove that piece of removable labeling tape. Once that's stamped down, you can take the other half of that piece, cover up Watts, and then I inked it up with mold wine ink, and now you'll see here I have a fun 2-tone sentiment. Off camera, I cut out the sentiment using the coordinating die, and I also cut out 2 plain sugar cube copies that I'm going to use to help make the sentiment level across the card front. So the first thing I did was adhere the 2 white copies together, and then I figured out what words would be on either side of the light bulb, and that was pretty much love and the ATTS of the watts. Once I had that figured out, I trimmed off the sections I would need from my sugar cube copies and got these adhered to the back of my sentiment. After this piece was dry, I added it to the front, and here are some close-up looks at the finished card. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. If you enjoyed the process, a thumbs up is appreciated. And if you're not already a subscriber, we do hope you'll click on the button below so you're the first to know about our latest videos. To find out more about the products I used today, you can check out the links in the description box below or visit the Tailored Expressions online store at tailoredexpressions.com.